There's this deep, really comforting assumption that a lot of parents walk around with.
Oh, I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah, that education is education. My kid is bright. The schools will figure out the rest. It's a lovely thought, isn't it?
It is a lovely thought. It's also probably one of the most dangerous administrative assumptions a mobile family can make.
Dangerous. How so?
Well, the moment a family actually moves, and it doesn't matter if it's across the city, across state lines, or especially across international borders, that beautiful, fluid idea it evaporates instantly.
Education becomes something else entirely.
It turns into paperwork,
Yeah.
proof, and, the painful, really time-consuming negotiation of equivalence.
Okay, let's unpack this because we've done a deep dive into sources that reveal a pretty stark truth here. The high stakes of relocation. They're almost entirely administrative.
That's it.
This isn't about how smart your child is or the quality of the education they received. It's about the evidence of that education.
Mm-hmm.
It's your child's records, that stack of papers that ends up deciding their future admissions.
Their grade placement, their academic continuity, all of it.
And it's a truth that many parents, I imagine, discover way too late in the game.
Oh, absolutely. They discover it when they're, say, 3 days away from that admission deadline in a new country, and they suddenly need a document they never even knew existed.
And that document might take 6 weeks to get from a school that's, 8,000 miles away?
Exactly. It's a panic-inducing situation.
And it's funny because we spend so much time and energy discussing curriculum philosophy. Should my child be in a system focused on rote learning? What about continuous assessment?
All valid questions. But when you move, none of that is the first hurdle.
So in that moment of transfer, nobody cares about your old school's reputation for, say, creative output.
Not in the slightest. The admissions officer cares about transcripts. They care about the specific legal function of a migration certificate, whether your documents are apostilled.
All these technical terms we're going to get into.
Right. They need to know if the assessment evidence maps onto their known standards. The lesson here, and it's a tough one, is that documentation truly becomes destiny.
And that is the mission of this deep dive.
Right.
We're going to go beyond the philosophical choices and get right into the administrative reality of transferring those records.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to unpack the 3 major systems, CBSE, the state boards, and the IB, and really reveal the specific non-negotiable documents you need for a smooth transfer.
And this isn't about judging intelligence. It's about giving you the administrative roadmap.
Exactly, to prevent that last-minute panic and make sure your child's education continues without a hitch. All right, so let's start with the basics, the word itself, transferability. You said earlier it's not an idea, it's a concrete 3-part process.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that distinction so critical for a parent to understand?
It's crucial because it completely reframes your expectations. Transferability isn't something a school just grants you. It's an administrative transaction, a transaction that has to be executed successfully.
And for it to work, you're saying 3 distinct things have to happen all at once, and they all depend on that paperwork.
They do. They have to happen simultaneously.
So what's the first step in this administrative trinity?
The first is just basic comprehension. The new school, the receiving school, has to be able to understand your child's entire learning journey from the papers you give them.
Just understand it.
Right. They need to decipher the scores, know the grading scale, recognize the curriculum structure. It's not just about seeing a final grade. It's about seeing the architecture behind that grade.
Okay, that right there already sounds like a friction point, especially if you're moving from, say, a percentage-based system to one that uses letter grades.
Precisely. Which leads to the second step. It's acceptance. But not just by the school.
By the board.
By the broader regulatory body, yes. The receiving educational board, whether that's a local state board, an international curriculum like Cambridge, or a university admissions office, they have to accept that academic standing as valid in their system.
So it needs some kind of official stamp of approval.
It often does. It requires something that says, yes, this document represents recognized academic achievement that is equivalent to grade 10 in our system. Without that, it's just a piece of paper.
And the third step. This must be the biggest hurdle when you're crossing international borders.
It is. The receiving nation has to recognize the equivalence. You could have a perfect report card, and the school might love it. But if the local Ministry of Education doesn't recognize the validity of the board that issued it,
you're stuck.
You are stuck in administrative limbo. You might have to present supplementary evidence or even take a formal national entrance exam just to be placed in the grade you already completed.
I want to circle back to something you said because I think it's a real gut punch for parents. This whole process,
Yeah.
it's entirely divorced from how smart the student actually is.
It's the unavoidable and frankly heartbreaking reality.
I mean, you could have a truly gifted student who gets administratively downgraded just because their records are a mess.
That is exactly what happens. Let me give you an example. A student scores 98% in a state board exam. A fantastic achievement.
Absolutely.
But they show up with a one-page generalized mark sheet. No detailed syllabus mapping, no breakdown of assessment. That student is going to face immense friction. They might get placed in ninth grade instead of 10th in a new country simply because the admissions officer can't verify the rigor of the curriculum.
Wow.
Now, compare that to a student with an 85% in an IB program who comes with 30 pages of detailed transcripts, portfolio evidence, teacher evaluations. The 85% student transfers seamlessly. The 98% student faces delays, reassessment, and a possible downgrade.
And it's purely about the clarity of the documentation.
It's about establishing administrative trust. That's all it is.
That is such a critical distinction. It makes you realize the admissions officer isn't trying to gauge your child's potential.
Yeah.
They're trying to gauge the risk posed by the documentation.
And to mitigate that risk, they ask 3 essential questions. These are the filters.
Okay, let's dig into those technical filters.
These 3 questions are the administrative filtration mechanism of global education mobility. The parent's job is to make sure the paperwork answers all 3 without any ambiguity. The first one is, what exactly was taught?
Syllabus verification.
Syllabus verification.
And this is where the differences between educational philosophies suddenly become paper trail liabilities, isn't it?
Absolutely. A centralized system like CBSE might just assume standard content, but a diverse international system needs proof. They need to map your curriculum to theirs to make sure that grade 9 history in your old school covered, say, 20th century global conflicts, which is a prerequisite for their grade 10.
And if the transcript just says social studies grade A,
That is dangerously ambiguous. It doesn't answer the question.
which brings us to the second question, assessment.
How is it assessed? This is grading validation, and it's a huge friction point. Was that grade based on one single high-stakes final exam?
Worth, say, 80% of the final mark.
Right. Or was it based on continuous assessment, projects, presentations, a final paper, all weighted more or less equally? The methodology is fundamental to trusting the score.
So a school in, say, Canada that's used to 50% internal assessment might not trust a 100% score from a single rote-based final exam.
Not without a lot of underlying evidence, no.
And this is where we have to talk about the ugly side of GPA conversion. A percentage score is so common in India, but the US and Canadian systems, they run on that 4.0 scale. How does that administrative conversion so often lead to downgrades?
It's a huge technical trap because the conversion is almost never a simple one-to-one mapping. For example, in many Indian systems, scoring between 80% and 90% is considered outstanding.
Top of the class.
But when a U.S. registrar converts that to a GPA, they have to use a chart. And often, unless the student is firmly in the 95+% bracket, they're not getting a perfect 4.0. They might get a 3.7 or 3.8.
Why? Why did
Because the receiving institution's chart might define 90% as the high end of an A, but only 95% and above warrants the A+, that translates to a 4.0. And what's worse, if your documentation is vague, they will always default to the most conservative conversion rate possible.
to protect their own academic integrity?
Exactly. So the student's achievement gets an administrative downgrade, purely because the original documents didn't give the registrar the specific data they needed for a precise mapping.
That is fascinating. The difference between perceived excellence and administrative excellence. What about the third question?
The third question is the security check. Can we verify it independently? This is the proof requirement. Does the paperwork have official seals, a traceable board registration number, clear contact information?
And crucially, things like an apostille or legalization for international use.
Yes, because if the answers to what was taught, how was it assessed, and can we verify it are unclear.
The consequence is that the institution goes on the defensive.
Absolutely, defensive risk mitigation. And that means mandatory placement delays, requiring the child to take supplemental entrance tests in subjects they've already passed, or even placing them one grade level lower.
The institution is just protecting itself.
From inheriting a knowledge gap, or frankly, from validating fraudulent documents.
This all loops back to what you call the parent's blind spot. Parents choose schools based on these immediate factors: syllabus, reputation, how close it is to home, the fees. Why is that focus so incomplete when global mobility might be on the horizon?
because they're failing to grasp the long-term administrative consequence of that choice. Your child's academic records will outlive their time at that school by years, even decades.
Hmm.
So when you choose a school, you're not just choosing a teacher or a curriculum. You're implicitly choosing the administrative documentation system that will define your child's educational history for every future transfer and every university application.
So the choice of a simple, inexpensive state board school today.
Might mean you have to pay thousands of dollars and wait for months for equivalent certificates 10 years from now. This long-term administrative responsibility starts the second you sign that first admission form. You're not just enrolling a child, you are starting a document management protocol.
Okay, let's pivot now to the Central Board of Secondary Education, or CBSE. It governs a massive number of schools. And within India, a transfer for a CBSE student often feels, well, pretty seamless.
It does.
So what are the specific elements in the CBSE system that make domestic transfer so straightforward?
CBSE's main strength is its massive national footprint and its robust standardization. Domestically, there's just instant trust, and that trust comes from four key things.
Okay.
One, uniform grading patterns. Whether you're in Kerala or Kashmir, a 10-point CCE, or the current percentage scale, it's immediately recognizable. Two, the centralized board exams. The AC and ACE carry immense regulatory weight.
So everyone knows what they are.
Everyone knows what they are. Three, standardized report cards. The quality can vary a bit from school to school, but the core content sections are mandated. And four, and this is the big one, is the common syllabus reference point. A school in Mumbai knows exactly what a student from a school in Kolkata has been studying.
So there's very little verification needed.
Almost none. It acts like an internal administrative treaty.
But let's get really granular about the documents themselves. For a listener who's maybe preparing their files right now, what is the definitive list of essential, non-optional documents a CBSE student needs, even if they're just moving between states?
Okay, so we need to separate school-level documents from board-level documents. There are really four core pillars. First is the school transcripts.
The report cards.
Yes, but it has to be the detailed annual record, grades, attendance, and this is important, the internal assessment breakdown. You have to ask for the detail, not just the summary grade.
Okay, what's second?
Second is the transfer certificate, or TC. This comes from the school itself. It's a formal release verifying the student has completed their requirements, has no outstanding dues, no disciplinary issues. It's the immediate clearance document.
Now, you made a distinction. What about the board-level documents? Those come from CBSE itself, right?
Correct. The third pillar is the migration certificate. This is fundamentally different from the TC, and people get this wrong all the time. It is only issued by the CBSE board,
Not the school.
not the school, and it formally acknowledges that the student is moving out of the central board system. It's non-negotiable for college admission, for joining another board, or for any international move after grade 10 or 12. It's the official disaffiliation document.
That's a key distinction. TC is the school releasing you. Migration certificate is the board releasing you. And the final document.
The fourth, and this is where so many international transfers trip up, the medium of instruction letter. This certified letter must explicitly and officially state that the entire curriculum, physics, math, biology, all of it, was taught and assessed in English from a specific start date to an end date.
And if you don't have that,
If you don't have that, your high scores might not be enough to prove English proficiency abroad.
now here's where the sources really highlight the hidden friction. Why does CBSE, with all its national standardization, hit these significant roadblocks internationally? If it's so trusted in India, why is it viewed with skepticism by a registrar in, say, the UK?
It's what we can call the translation gap, and it comes directly from a difference in documentation philosophy. CBSE has traditionally focused on summative outcomes.
The final result, the big exam.
Exactly, the final result. International systems, especially in North America and Western Europe, demand evidence of process. They want to see continuous assessment records, skill-based evidence, formative feedback. They want to see the learning progression.
So it's not that the learning didn't happen in the CBSE school.
Not at all.
It's that the evidence for it is either buried or just doesn't exist on the official transcript. An international school looks at the report card, sees a final score, but they don't see the homework rubrics or the project breakdowns.
Precisely. For a foreign institution, that final score tells them what the student achieved at the finish line. The continuous assessment evidence tells them how the student learned, how they adapted, and what their skills are outside of pure exam pressure.
Okay, this friction point around assessment documentation.
Yeah.
We need to give some practical advice. What specific things should a parent proactively ask their CBSE school for to bridge this translation gap?
You have to push beyond the standard report card. You should specifically request, one, a detailed assessment weighting breakdown. It should show the percentage for internal versus external components. Two, formative assessment samples, especially for higher grades. Get high-scoring project work or investigation reports and make sure they are stamped and authenticated by the school. And three, subject-specific curricular outlines certified by the principal detailing the specific units covered in the last 2 years.
So you're essentially building the evidence portfolio that the system doesn't automatically provide.
You are turning a generalized score into verifiable proof of competency.
Let's go back to that medium of instruction headache. You said it's a frequent, frustrating issue. Why does this ambiguity still exist, even when a school is obviously an English medium school?
It comes down to administrative literalism. The school just assumes it's obvious, right? All the classes are in English.
Of course.
But the official legal documents, the TC, the transcripts, they're designed to confirm grades and attendance, not the language of instruction. So if that certification isn't a dedicated stamped and sealed line item on an official letterhead, then legally, for the receiving institution, it does not exist.
So an admissions officer in another country sees a transcript from a school in Delhi. They know India has vast linguistic diversity if the document doesn't explicitly say English medium.
Their policy dictates they must verify English proficiency. The moment there's ambiguity, risk mitigation kicks in.
Which means
Mandatory, costly, and time-consuming English tests like IELTS or TOEFL. And that can seriously delay placement, especially if your deadlines are tight. The assumption that it's obvious has to be formally certified on paper. And it should be specific, like English medium instruction utilized for all academic subjects, grades 1 through 12, continuously.
So what's the final verdict here? What's the reality check for a CBSE parent who might be planning a move, especially internationally?
The verdict is that CBSE is fully transferable, but it requires intense parental diligence.
It's not automatic.
No. CBSE kids transfer best when their schools are willing to issue detailed, granular transcripts records with formative data, not just summative scores. And the parent must be proactive. Get the transfer certificate and the migration certificate the moment your child finishes grade 10 or 12, even if you don't have plans to move yet.
You're saying you have to act like a private auditor of your own child's academic file. Don't wait.
Correct. And you have to maintain that file annually. Request the detailed records every single summer. Check that the medium of instruction clause is there and properly certified. If you delay, you are guaranteeing yourself a minimum 3-month administrative headache. It will cost you money, and it might result in an academic downgrade. CBSE gives you a robust foundation, but the parent is the architect of its global readiness.
Okay, let's transition now to state boards. These are the systems governed at the state level: Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and so on. Now, our sources describe their paperwork as feeling easier or faster for local moves. Why is that? What's the local advantage?
The advantage is hyper-localization and administrative simplicity. State boards are designed for regional coherence, not national or international mobility.
They're simpler.
They often use simpler records, fewer layers of assessment compared to CBSE's national machine. And within that state, the government, the schools, the local colleges, they all share the exact same administrative template. So if you move within Maharashtra, the new school instantly recognizes everything: the curriculum code, the grading system, the document's validity. The mapping is instantaneous.
They're perfectly optimized for moving down the road.
Exactly.
But the moment you step outside that state, or especially outside the country, that simplicity becomes a colossal liability, this global recognition gap. Can you break down the technical reasons why a state board document is so hard for a foreign institution to validate?
It really boils down to a fundamental lack of a standard reference point and no easy access to metadata. First, you have syllabi variation.
So what's taught in one state can be completely different from another.
Dramatically different. And foreign institutions can't just look up the detailed certified syllabus for the Andhra Pradesh State Board from 2018. That database doesn't exist for them in the way it does for something like IB or IGCSE.
So the admissions officer in Sydney has no idea what grade 8 mathematics in Mumbai actually covered.
Precisely. They have no trusted benchmark. Second, there's grading mechanism opacity. State boards use percentage or division systems that just don't map cleanly onto a GPA or a European credit system. And since there's no official, globally recognized conversion chart, the registrar is just left guessing.
And when they guess conservatively.
Always. They default to the most protective placement decision for their institution, which means the burden of proof shifts entirely onto the family to prove the document's worth.
So it's not bias against state boards, it's just a lack of data.
It's a lack of a standard reference. They simply cannot answer that third crucial question. Can we verify it independently?
Okay, so let's detail the hidden cost of this simplicity. What does that administrative burden actually look like for a family? What are the hoops they have to jump through?
This is where the initial low cost is paid back tenfold later on. The family has to budget both time and money for several mandatory steps. The first is almost always a mandatory equivalence certification.
What is that?
It means you have to use a third-party credential evaluation service. The big ones are WES World Education Services, or ECE. This can cost anywhere from $300 to $1,000 per child per application.
Wow.
They take your state board documents, they try to verify their authenticity by contacting the state board directly, which can take weeks, by the way, and then they issue a formal report that maps the local qualification onto the new country's standard. Mapping a 10th grade certificate to a U.S. high school diploma equivalent.
And the time delay on that alone could completely derail an admissions timeline.
It's a guaranteed delay. Minimum 4 to 6 weeks, and that's if all your paperwork is perfect and already translated. If you wait until the admission deadline, you will miss the window, period.
And there's more, isn't there?
Oh, yes. Because of the uncertainty around the curriculum, the student often faces additional compulsory entrance tests administered by the new school itself. They'll test for core competencies in math and science because they simply can't rely on the report card alone.
And what about the actual academic placement? Is downgrading a real risk here?
The risk of an academic penalty is high, yes. If the state board syllabus is found to have missed critical prerequisites, say certain units in physics or advanced algebra, the student might be required to take bridge courses when they arrive.
Or worse?
Or, in extreme cases, be placed in a lower grade level until those gaps are formally closed. The simplicity of the state board record gives the school no administrative choice but to assume a gap exists until proven otherwise.
You also mentioned translation and authentication, which must be a huge issue for state boards, given the use of regional languages.
Absolutely. Many state board documents, while they might have English sections, can have core details or official stamps in the regional language. For international use, you will need a certified, notarized translation of every single document.
And something called an apostille.
Yes. For many countries, you'll need an apostille. It's a formal stamp of authentication from the Ministry of External Affairs that legally certifies the document's origin for international use. It's a bureaucratic step most people have never heard of until they desperately need it.
Okay, so let's give the honest assessment. State boards are cost-effective, they're locally efficient, they're academically valid within their own ecosystem.
Yeah.
But what is the critical, non-negotiable caveat for the globally mobile family?
The caveat is this. If global movement is even a remote possibility in your future, choosing a state board is a choice of high administrative risk. Parents have to understand that they are signing up to become the sole administrators of their child's global academic portfolio.
You have to do the work the system doesn't do for you.
You have to proactively create, translate, and certify detailed curricular outlines and assessment methodologies that the system itself just does not mandate. You are essentially paying a future penalty in time, stress, and money for the low administrative cost you enjoyed today.
Now we shift gears completely to the International Baccalaureate, the IB. Our sources are unanimous on this. This system was fundamentally engineered from the ground up to solve this exact mobility problem.
It really was.
Why is the IB's design so uniquely suited for families that are constantly in transition?
Because mobility is written directly into its DNA. I mean, the IB was established specifically to support the children of diplomats and multinational families. The genius of it is the structural commitment to global consistency.
What does that mean in practice?
It means the curriculum structure, the grading, the documentation requirements, they're all built to ensure immediate, frictionless global recognition. An IB diploma score from a school in Bengaluru is instantly understood, benchmarked, and trusted by a university in Auckland or the US or the EU.
Because they're all speaking the same standardized administrative language.
Exactly. It completely eliminates the need for those third-party equivalence assessments or the deep syllabus verification that plagues CBSE and state boards when they go international. The IB provides the metadata layer that the other systems just don't have.
Let's look at the documentation itself.
Mm.
What is it about IB records that makes the students' learning so visible and therefore so effective compared to the summative focus of other systems?
The documentation makes a fundamental shift from a report card focused on results to a portfolio focused on evidence. IB mandates detailed academic records.
Like what?
Well, you have digital academic records, a detailed digitized history of scores and teacher comments. You have internal assessment samples, which are mandatory long-form pieces of student work. You have detailed teacher evaluations, including predictive grades, which are often more trusted by foreign admissions officers than the student's own grades.
Or trustable.
Yes, because they represent the school's professional prognosis of the student's ability. And you have skill-based portfolios, especially in the younger years, that document skill progression and inquiry, not just test scores.
So the core principle is clear. Learning is made visible through a whole stack of evidence. It's not just assumed from a single final score.
Right. It eliminates the uncertainty that drives receiving schools to require all that supplementary testing. When an IB student transfers, they are handing over not just a grade, but the verifiable evidence of how that grade was achieved and how that student thinks.
Not just what they can recall for an exam.
Precisely.
Let's do a deep dive on those internal assessments, the IAs and the extended essay. Why are those pieces of internal evidence considered the gold standard of transferability?
Because they demonstrate critical executive functions that a high-stakes exam often hides. They show a student's ability to, 1, sustain independent research. The extended essay is a 4,000-word research paper. That proves critical inquiry. 2, they demonstrate practical application. A science IA involves designing and running an actual experiment, showing genuine scientific method skills. And 3, they show the student can manage complexity. These are long-term projects with multiple stages, drafts, reflections. That's a key predictor of success at university.
So university isn't just seeing a grade. They're seeing the evidence of the process, the student's methodology. That has to significantly reduce the administrative risk for them.
It does. The IA evidence makes the student's competencies transparent. If a student transfers mid-program, the new school doesn't just see interim grades. They see the actual, verified, externally moderated evidence that informed those grades. This allows for immediate, confident placement.
This all sounds like a perfect system for the mobile parent. But you're saying even the IB isn't immune to the neglect. What's a massive trade-off that parents sometimes ignore with the IB path?
The trade-off is engagement. The IB system demands the highest level of administrative diligence from the family and from the student. The structure is robust, yes, but the documentation requires consistent, high-quality, ongoing input from all three parties: the teacher, the student, and the parent.
Can you give me a concrete example of how parental disengagement could actually negate that IB advantage?
Sure. Imagine a parent who sees the IB as just another curriculum and assumes the school will handle all the paperwork. They ignore requests to sign off on reflection journals, or they don't ensure their child meets the deadlines for IA drafts.
So a portfolio gets weak.
Exactly. The student might be academically brilliant, but if their internal assessment portfolios are weak, poorly formatted, or lack the required teacher validation, that portfolio can be deemed incomplete or insufficiently rigorous by a receiving school.
So even with a great final exam score, a transfer could be blocked if the supporting evidence that portfolio is weak or missing.
The IB structure does not compensate for administrative laxity. Not at all.
That's the crucial warning.
It is. IB documentation is powerful because it's so voluminous and detailed. But if that volume is filled with poorly maintained or incomplete evidence, the transfer advantage is just negated. The family has to understand their role as co-custodians of that documentation.
So the reality check for IB is that it only transfers smoothly when that documentation is actively and diligently maintained.
Exactly. The IB provides the administrative scaffolding, but the family has to make sure that scaffolding is filled with quality, preserved evidence. If you choose the IB for its mobility, you have to commit to the administrative rigor that sustains it.
This deep dive has really reframed the whole idea of education transfer. It's not philosophical, it's administrative. And the choice of curriculum really does define the ease of movement later on.
Mhm.
So before we wrap up, let's shift from analysis to immediate preparation. If a parent is listening to this right now, what are the 5 essential questions they should be asking themselves to audit their own administrative preparedness?
This is your administrative stress test, and you should run through this checklist tonight no matter what board your child is in or how old they are.
Okay, number 1.
Number 1, do I have complete granular transcripts, and I mean transcripts that detail every subject, every year, every grade, and the methodology of assessment? If your kid is in grade 7, you need detailed stamped records for grades 1 through 6 that you can access tonight.
Number 2.
Are assessments documented clearly for an external review? Is there context for the grades? If you're in a CBSE or state board school, have you proactively saved any of that underlying formative evidence, like project rubrics or detailed assignment scores, just in case?
Good one. Number 3.
Can a stranger understand my child's learning journey from the paper trail alone? Imagine you hand this stack of papers to a registrar in Singapore who knows nothing about your school. If they can't map the syllabus and assessment method in 10 minutes without calling you, your documentation is insufficient.
Okay, number 4.
Is the medium of instruction officially certified? Look at your transfer certificates and report cards right now. Is that statement certifying the language of instruction there? Is it clearly stated and officially sealed? If it's not, stop everything and request that specific, dedicated letter from the school tomorrow.
And last one, number 5.
Have I proactively planned for equivalence and authentication? If you're in a state board system, or you're even thinking about an international move, have you researched which bodies, like WES, can certify your specific board? Do you know where to get an apostille or a notarized translation? Do not wait until you land overseas to start a 6-week bureaucratic process.
That final synthesis just crystallizes the stakes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Choosing a curriculum, CBSE, state board, IB, that's a matter of educational philosophy. It's about how your child learns.
Right.
But managing the transfer process, that's pure cold administration. It's about what paper follows them.
And if you ignore that administration, the children pay the price. The academic strength is there, the intelligence is there, but if the administrative proof isn't, the child suffers delays, expensive extra requirements, and even downgrades. Administrative diligence is academic protection.
So what's the final provocative thought we leave with our listener today? Something for them to mull over as they go check their files.
Mobility isn't defined by where your child studies today. It's not even defined by how impressive their final exams are. Mobility is entirely defined by the quality, the completeness, and the universal trust commanded by what follows them on paper when life demands a move. So prepare early, document carefully, and never, ever assume the systems will adjust later. The key administrative question you should answer tonight is this. If you had to leave the country tomorrow, what is the one crucial missing certificate that, if it's absent, would derail your child's educational future globally? Find that one thing, track it down, and your journey to global administrative security begins right there.